Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Happy Saturday. This is Crystal with from Crystal XO. And I just wanted to step back in because I had a great conversation with you guys earlier this week about sacrifice and what you're willing to sacrifice for your relationship. If you guys are just tuning in and you haven't been to this channel before, my book, Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You, has received a lot of feedback, a lot of good feedback actually. But I'm doing conversations on this channel all the time about the book and why I wrote the book and why I feel like the book is important, but most importantly, why the conversation is important. So I just want to jump on a Saturday morning and talk to people. Anybody that's out there, you guys are there, leave and you can hear everything. Leave me an XO in the chat so that I will know that you're there. And of course, if you have anything to say, if you want to respond to something I'm saying, please let me know, because I love the conversation to go back and forth. I love it to be interactive. But today I wanted to jump on, like I said, I mentioned in broadcast last earlier this week. What are you willing to sacrifice? And I told the people that were watching and viewers to write down, we're so used to writing down a list of what we want in a man. I wanted you to write a list of what you're willing to give in a relationship, what you're willing to sacrifice. And that had people kind of thinking like, whoa, what does that mean? What does that mean? Hey, Grace Holland, thank you so much for tuning in. And so I wanted to talk to today just to go a little bit further into that, because I think um, Chris Rock said in Play the Tambourine, his last comedy special before this most recent one, that if you're not willing to serve, you're not willing to be in a marriage. And I honestly believe that is true. I think that we hear so much conversation about what we want in a partner and what a man has to do to get me to be interested in him and what I'm looking for and what I won't settle for. And very rarely, if ever, have I heard a woman say, especially an alpha female, talk about what they're willing to sacrifice to be in a relationship. What are you willing to sacrifice to be in a relationship? I don't even think that is a term or a thought process that most of us have really embraced. And I'll admit, I definitely was not someone that had embraced that a few years ago. Definitely was not thinking about that. Definitely was thinking about, you know what? I know what I don't want. I know what I've been through before. I know what I'm not putting up with. And that's the energy I was putting out. But when I actually took some time and did my work, as Miss Iyanla said, I was able to realize that there was a lot of things that, number one, I needed to work on. And then I needed to have a full, clear understanding of what I was willing to sacrifice in order to be in a relationship. What are you willing to sacrifice in order to be in a relationship? When it comes to business, because again, these conversations on this channel are for women that are career driven, women that are ambitious by nature and motivated. Hello, Blondie. Hello, Dr. Colton. Thank you so much for joining. Shouts out to all the alpha females that are out there. Alpha female is not a negative term. It is simply a description of a woman that has leadership qualities, that knows who she is, and is focused on being successful in her own right. This is not for women that are not focused on being successful in their own right, that are focused more on getting someone else's bag and using that as opposed to their own. If that's you, this is not the channel for you. I'm sure there are lots of channels out there for you, but that's not who my audience is, and that's not really who I'm talking to. That's not really what I connect with. I connect with women that are career driven, motivated, passionate about what they do and want to be successful. And these women, and self included, have no problem when it comes to sacrificing, when it comes to career, when it comes to school, when it comes to accolades. We understand there is a relationship between sacrifice and success, right? We all realize that there is a very real relationship between sacrifice and success. You cannot get to success without being willing to sacrifice. So it stands to reason why many of us have never thought about the fact that we would need to sacrifice in order to be in a relationship. The thumbnail for today's conversation is one of my engagement pictures with my husband, because I wanted to make sure that people, saw a picture that they thought, oh, that looks sweet. But the reality is, relationships are not sweet all the time, right? My husband got home last night around 1:30 in the morning and wanted something to eat. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I had been out. I had been at a meeting really late. I got in. I was tired. I couldn't really get to sleep because I knew he was coming in. So I was kind of like sleep, but half sleep, waking up. And as soon as he got in, he was like, I'm hungry. I didn't get a chance to eat. And so I got up out of the bed and fix him some food. Now, that's probably not a big sacrifice, but for someone that was used to doing things on their own terms, right? Someone who was used to focusing on myself and what was good for me, getting up out of the bed when I knew I had something to do early this morning to cook him cook him food at 2 o'clock in the morning was a sacrifice, right? And so I thought, let me jump on this morning and talk about the other side because everybody thinks about marriage in terms of what that man is going to do to make my life easier. But I would suggest that we need to have a conversation about what we're willing to do to make that person's life easier and just to make a soft space for that for our significant others. I was at a dinner last night, a work dinner, and there was a man, a gentleman there, and he was talking about, I want to live a soft life too. And all of us women kind of screwed our faces up. It's like, that's not really what we want to hear from a man. But the reality is, if you want a healthy relationship, right, then you want to be in a situation where there is a give and take. If you are in a relationship where you are just receiving, and he is giving, eventually that relationship is going to become one that is not comfortable for the person that is the sole giver. Many of us have been the givers at one point, right? And have been taken advantage of. And so what that often does is get women to a point where they're like, I'm not doing this anymore. But unfortunately, if you have gotten to the point where you've given before, you've been taken advantage of, and you've decided that you're not willing to do that anymore, then you've ultimately decided that you're not ready to be in a relationship, that you're not willing to be in a relationship, because it is never going to be a healthy, successful relationship if things are if the giving is going one way and the receiving is going one way, right? So you have to be willing to do that. And I would say, what I've learned, and I just try to share with you guys as I'm going. But what I've learned is you cannot be accountable nor responsible for the other person, right? You can only be responsible for yourself. So of course you want your significant other to give back to you, right? However, you're not in charge of that. So all you're in charge of, all that you're responsible for, all that you're accountable for is for what you're willing to give and what you're giving on a consistent basis, right? Marriage is not, I don't believe that marriage is 50-50, because I believe it is 100%, 100%. And I also believe that everyone is not able to give 100% all the time. So there may be times when you're giving 100% and your partner is giving, 70%. And there may be times when they're giving, 100% and you're giving 60%. And there, I mean, it's going to fluctuate because we're humans and we're not perfect and we go through things. If someone loses a parent, I'm not going to expect him to be giving at 100% during that time, because that is probably the most heart wrenching and heartbreaking times in our life. If we're dealing with illness from a parent, dealing with a death of a parent, dealing with illness from a child, financial issues, there's so many things that can happen that cause people not to be able to give at 100%. But if you are in a marriage, you are signed up, or you in a relationship that's heading towards marriage, that you're looking for marriage, you have to say, you know what, even if that person is not able to give me 100%, I am willing to still give them my 100%. And that is uncomfortable. That can be uncomfortable if you've been used before. That can be uncomfortable if you've gotten used to being single and you've gotten used to doing things your own way. Being able to say, you know what, I am committed to giving. I am committed to being someone that person can rely on, regardless of what they're giving me. That takes a lot of maturity. That takes a lot of maturity. So I wanted to have this conversation. I would love to hear, what you guys think about that. This is not about, if you do for me, I'll do for you. If you feel like that, and if you have that type of mentality, in my humble opinion, you're not ready to be in a relationship, because there are very few times, where people are both at the same level of healthiness, of wealthiness. There could be times when you could get in a situation with someone and they're very, very, very financially well off, right? And then say significant other, your husband, loses his job? You know, at what point do you say, I've got to be able to pick up some of the weight? And I think that's a part of a real relationship that we don't always talk about. Social media likes to highlight the good stuff, right? I'm going to get with a man who's financially set and it's going to make my life easier. And I'm going to just look pretty and I'm going to be receiving of all his goodness. That is not realistic. That's not realistic. And it may start out that way, but what if that person gets sick? What if that person's goes through getting laid off from their job or loses an account that provides them with a lot of stability? Like, we have to be realistic about this. And so that's why I want everyone to write down. I wanted to bring a little clarity to that. What are you willing to sacrifice to be in a relationship? Are you willing, number one, alpha female, are you willing to give up control of what that looks like? Are you willing to give up control of what your life looks like? I will tell you all, I had my life was, it had gone a certain way. I was single for around 10 years. And so there was a certain rhythm to my life, right? My children got older and they went to college and they moved on, but there was a distinct rhythm. I did things the way I wanted to do them, right? I did work all the time. I didn't really take off a lot. My work was my focus and my focal point. And so if someone wanted to disrupt that, I would push back. I was talking to a young lady last night and she said, work is my priority. And so if I'm going out with someone and they threaten that work, then I look at them like, well, this is how I pay my bills. I'm not willing to do that. That makes a lot of sense. I thought that way as well. However, that mentality is not conducive to a healthy relationship. That mentality is not even really conducive to a relationship at all. If you're not willing to be flexible, if you're rigid and unwilling to bend, then you're probably not really ready to be in a relationship. A lot of times we ask God for things that we're not really ready to receive. And so I just wanted those of you that listen to this channel to give that a little bit of thought. What am I willing to sacrifice? Am I willing to give up the flow and the rhythm of my life, right? Am I willing to be inconvenienced by something that I may not know the outcome, because there is no guarantee on anything. Like I said, I posted the picture of my husband and I, but there's no guarantee that anything will be absolutely forever. It's always a gamble. You always have to be willing to make an educated choice to say, okay, this person has shown me they're willing to work. This person has shown me that they love me and they prioritize me. I'm willing to take a chance and sacrifice and make that same commitment, to them. But it's never it's never 100% guarantee. It takes work. It takes work, and it takes equal work on both sides. Christy T says, I'm finally ready. Where are you at? Where are you at though? Girl, he's coming. I promise he is coming. The relationship is coming, but I just want to make sure that those of you that are saying that you're ready are really ready for this, are really ready, and self included. Like, I'm making changes and making adjustments. But I can tell you, as a woman that was so into her work and so into just, this is the life that I've carved out. I spend this amount of time with my girlfriends. I do this, I do that. When I met my husband, he just threw a wrench into all of that. It's like, he needs attention. He wants this, he wants that, he wants this. And I had to realize that I had to be willing to give up that control. I had to be willing to embrace the unknown. And that is very scary when you haven't had to do that for years. When you haven't, my entire mid 30s to early 40s, I did not have to, everything went my way, right? I didn't have to ask anybody about anything. I didn't have to talk over anything with anybody. That's another thing that I hear a lot of women have an issue with. Why am I going to consult you about something? Well, that's what a relationship is about. It's not all about you. Blondie Monique says, I recently had a conversation with my man about that. You will have to make sacrifices. A good man will not take excuses on why you can't. Girl, you're speaking a whole word. A good man will not take excuses on why you can't make sacrifices. That's so true. And I think that's why a lot of times we confuse a good man with a man that is a pushover, right? And so I would suggest any man that just lets you push him around and boss him around. I know a lot of girlfriends that are, leaders, strong alpha females, and they get with a man that doesn't have as strong of a personality, right? And he kind of allows them to push, prod, and he bends and he's flexible. There's two things that can happen from that. Number one, you could just have a man that's full of it, and he's in a situation that works for him because he's probably benefiting from it. But as soon as he comes to himself, he's out. He's out. And because no man wants to be with a woman that doesn't respect him. Number two, that man is going to take it because he loves you and takes it and allows you to push, prod, bend. And then one day he's going to bite back, right? And because all this resentment is going to build up in him and he's going to come back at you. And that's how we see it. I want to preface this, what I'm about to say. I'm not saying there's ever a reason or an excuse for having an affair, right? I'm not saying it's an excuse for a man to do anything outside of what he told you that he would commit to doing. However, if you are with someone that you are blatantly disrespecting on a regular basis, and I see that happen a lot with women that are very opinionated, right? A lot of times you don't even realize that you're belittling him in order to make yourself look big. You don't even realize that you're emasculating him in order to get your point across because you're so afraid of change and you're so afraid of not being in control that you would put him down and kind of ridicule what he wants or what he believes in. And I'm telling you, when that happens, it's usually, you can look at your watch and wait on the time when he will find a woman that will build him back up. And again, I'm not saying that there's an excuse for cheating, but I am saying if you are pushing, prodding, disrespecting the man that you're with, you can't be surprised when he looks to find a woman that pours into him, and empowers him. That's just a part of what it is. It's just like when we are in a relationship with a man. You're in a relationship with a man that is abusive, verbally abusive, and constantly telling you how you're not anything and you're not this and complaining. And then you go out someplace and a man is like, girl, you are beautiful, and talking, and he makes you feel good. It's an automatic human reaction to want to lean into where you're being appreciated and where you're being made special. So let's just be realistic, ladies. This is a accountability opportunity. I call my book A Love Letter Wrapped in Accountability, and that's exactly what this channel is about. It is a love letter wrapped in accountability, sis. So we can't complain and call that man a dog and say he's evil and he came to hurt me when you have been consistently running over him, talking down to him, just because you don't want to lose that control, right? Just like I think being in the wrong relationship with the wrong person is the biggest detriment to self-esteem ever. If you are in a relationship with someone that talks down to you, that is, to me, one of the biggest contributors to breaking down your self-esteem. And a lot of times I would tell women, that want to stay in a relationship, you got to think about what the after effect of being in that negative relationship is going to do to you. Well, in the same token, when a man is in a relationship with a woman that doesn't allow him just to have a voice, right? And is constantly tearing him down to prove that she's smarter, that she knows more than he does. That is also verbal abuse. And, that does a lot to a man's self-esteem. I think as women, one of the beautiful things that God gifted us with was we have a power, right, within us, within our mouths. We can either make a man feel like he's a king, or we can make him feel lower than the dirt on the bottom of our shoe, and I think that, men are able to hurt women's feelings. But I think at the core, women, we pour into each other so much. And your girlfriend would be like, girl, you fine, you look better than da, 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 da. But guys that don't necessarily have that same relationship, they'll be like, get over it and go on to the next girl. But as far as actually being poured back into them, they don't have that. Where do they get that from? Other women. And so if another woman is empowering your man more than you, um, 9 times out of 10, sis, down the road, you're going to have a problem. And that's probably not something that you really want. I've talked to so many alpha females that have come to me after the fact and said, you know what? I did not realize I was emasculating my man. I wasn't trying to, that wasn't my intent, but yet that's what I ended up doing. And now I regret it. I can even acknowledge that in my first marriage, I had no idea. And my intent was definitely not to make him feel better, to tear him down. But there were certain times when he would want to do something or he would express something to me, and I'd be like, that don't make any sense. And I would just go off, and I realized later, with wisdom, because I didn't know at the time, that was tearing him down, and I'm speaking from experience, ladies, when I say your man will find an opportunity to be with someone that will speak life into him. And it's no surprise that when he finds that, a lot of times that ends up being an affair, and that ends up being something that destroys a relationship or a marriage. And that's what happened to me in my first marriage. Again, I'm not excusing what he did because it wasn't right. But looking back on it, I wish that I had known. I wish that there had been someone to tell me, sis, you got to be careful with the words you say to the person that you love. Even if you're upset, even if he may be wrong, because he could be, but how you say it and how you phrase it speaks to the level of womanhood that you're at. And at the time, I did not know. I did not know. And so that's really why I'm so passionate about this channel. That's why I'm so passionate about this book. If you don't have your copy of Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You, I would ask you to grab a copy. They are available on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, everywhere. And where there's opportunity for you to journal after each chapter, so that you can share with yourself. Really, this is about self introspection, because before we're ready to be in a relationship, we have to really look into ourselves. And even if you're in a relationship, but that relationship is not in a healthy place, you still may want to pick up this book and do some more work, because you can't be in a great relationship if you aren't in a great relationship with yourself. Um, I'm going to read really quickly just a little snippet from a chapter in the book. Well, actually, it's a segment called Risk versus Reward. And we're talking about risk versus reward. I think a lot of us understand that when it comes to work, right? When it comes to investment, there are a lot of you that are amazing. There are women that are amazing investors and beautiful portfolios, and have learned how to really, work the system and be successful. But a lot of times we don't apply that same uh, theory to our relationship. And so this chapter is titled Risk versus Reward. I start most of these chapters with a Bible verse. This verse says, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. And that is really what this is about. A lot of times we make mistakes that we could have avoided, by either not being ready or not reading the signs that we saw in front of us, right? When you enter a romantic relationship, it's always an investment. You will receive a return on your investment, but it may not be what you are hoping for. If the reward of love outweighs the risk and you pursue it, then determine how much of your time, love, and energy you are willing to invest in the short and long term. And that's really what I want people to understand about this. Like you have to be willing, to invest time. You have to be willing to invest energy, and you have to be willing, most of all, to invest love and something else with no guarantee. And if my statement makes you take a second glance, then you really may not be ready like you think you are. I was excited to buy my first house myself. Although the real estate market can be risky, I knew that buying a home aligned with my future and even my short-term goals I would benefit from that annually, because the interest and taxes I paid for the house would reduce my taxable income. I also knew that as I continued to spend on the house, I would benefit in the long run with equity. Consequently, the reward of a paid for asset at retirement would be far greater than the short term risk of market fluctuation. In real estate, as long as you maintain your property and pay your expenses, you are almost guaranteed a positive reward in the future. Wouldn't it be great if relationships work like that? If we want a happily ever after marriage, we must decide when the risk of dating or pursuing a relationship is worth it. Get all the facts checked out and do your homework on him. Give it your all if you think you will receive your desired outcome. Although it's a risk, you still have to go into it with confidence and no doubt. If you are afraid to enter a relationship with someone due to the fear of getting hurt, then either that person isn't right for you or you are not ready to invest. Men want women who are all in. Do not enter a relationship if you are lukewarm. I'm going to stop right there because I think that you guys kind of get the message, but that's what this is about. I think I see a lot of us, self included, from before, trying to enter a relationship lukewarm, right? Trying to enter the relationship, not taking a risk, but allowing him to take all the risk. And it was no surprise that in those relationships, and I had a few relationships, short lived relationships. I think the longest one before I got remarried was about a year. But I was trying to go into those relationships without taking a risk. And so I would look to them to make the to make the sacrifice. And I wanted to really keep living life as I was because I didn't want to get hurt again. Right. It wasn't from a bad place. It wasn't from me being a bad person. It just was from me being hurt and not wanting to risk that. And I remember going on a date with a guy, and he said to me, if you're not willing to risk getting your heart broken again, then you'll never fall in love again. And I remember I looked at him and I ended the date right. And I was irritated. I was just like, why would you say something like that? It was irritating to me. But coming from a man, I didn't want to hear that. But after years later, I thought about what he said and I realized he was absolutely right. If you are not willing to risk, it comes with the same thing with the job. If you're not willing to risk, you're something for the job, you're probably not going to get it. You're not going to do well. With real estate, if you're not willing to risk, you're not going to win. With buying a house, if you're not willing to take a risk, you're not going to win. And my sisters, that is the same thing when it comes to a relationship. If you're not willing to risk, if you're not willing to invest, and that investment, I'm not talking about monetarily, I'm talking about your energy, your emotion, your vulnerability. You need to be willing to risk your emotions, your vulnerability, your time, and your energy in order to get a return on your investment, which could be the love of your life. But please don't trick yourself into believing that you would be able to give half of yourself and receive the entirety of him. Please do not tell yourself the lie that you can show up and not be willing to sacrifice and still receive the return on your investment, which is a beautiful, loving relationship. That's just not how this goes. And just because you've been successful in business has nothing to do with the relationship of you being successful in love. It hasn't, they're two totally different polarizing things. Just because I was successful as a public relations professional does not mean that I would be successful, in investment, in the investment world, right? Two very different disciplines, two very different things. I have to prove myself, sacrifice, put in the work, put the skin in. I have to do the work in order to get the return. You cannot take the success from one place and translate it over. And a lot of times I think we try to do that. We say, well, hey, I'm successful. I have these degrees. I have this, I have that. I'm a great catch. Well, that's not what makes you a great catch. What makes you a great catch is your willingness to come to the table and invest and put it on the line, for the right situation in love. So I just wanted to leave you all with that on a beautiful Saturday morning. I hope that you are enjoying your weekend. I hope that you are taking a little bit of time for self-care. To love on yourself, because that is the first step to receiving love from someone else. If you are watching this broadcast and you have not liked this broadcast, I would ask you to do that, please, because I think this message, I literally am on here to share this message because I think this is what I am supposed to be doing. And it would benefit me and the channel if you would go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because I'm going to be just doing these just out of the blue sometime, just coming on and sharing from the book. If you don't have your copy, one last time, make sure that you get your copy of Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You. The book is available everywhere books are sold. That's the back cover, and there's actually a foreword from Chili. Rosanna Chili Thomas is a good friend of mine, did the foreword for the book. I'm going to read the foreword real quick before I get out of here. She says, being loved is a basic human need. As women, we must learn who we are and what we need before we look for partners. So many people are unhappy because they did not take the time to love, heal, and get to know themselves before starting a new relationship. Crystal and I have had countless conversations on love and relationships, and I'm glad she wrote this book and included God's word in the relationship conversation. Successful and material items mean nothing if you operate outside of God's will for your life. I know Crystal truly believes in love, and we both want other women to experience the kind of love God intended for all of us. That's from my good friend Chili from TLC, who you guys may know is in an amazing relationship right now. And I'm so happy for her. So again, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure that you go ahead, like, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more relationship conversation right here on From Crystal XO. I love you all and enjoy the rest of your weekend.